Here's a strange fact. If you traveled back in time 1,000 years and tried to speak English to the people living in England, they wouldn't understand you. Not a single word. And you wouldn't understand them either. Why? Because the English language has changed so much that Old English and Modern English are like two completely different languages. The word hello didn't exist. The word computer didn't exist. Even simple words like they and them came from another language. So how did English become the language you're learning today? How did it travel around the world? And why does it have so many strange spelling rules? Let's find out together. Welcome. Today, we're going on a journey through time. We're going to explore the fascinating history of the English language. English is now spoken by over 1.5 billion people around the world. It's the language of business, science, travel, and the internet. But it wasn't always this way. English started as a small language spoken by a few tribes on a rainy island in Europe. So what happened? How did it grow? How did it change? And why is it sometimes so difficult to learn? In this video, we'll travel from ancient Britain to the modern world. We'll meet invaders, poets, scientists, and explorers. We'll see how war, trade, and technology shaped the language. And by the end, you'll understand why English is the way it is. So let's begin. Our story starts around the year 450. At this time, Britain was home to Celtic people. The Celts spoke Celtic languages, which are very different from English. But then something happened. Tribes from across the sea began to arrive. These tribes came from what is now Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. They were called the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. These tribes were warriors and farmers. They came to Britain looking for new land. They pushed the Celtic people to the edges of the island, to places like Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. And they brought their own languages with them. These languages mixed together and became what we call Old English. Old English is the earliest form of English. It was spoken from around 450 to 1100. If you heard Old English today, you would think it was a completely foreign language. Let me give you an example. The famous Old English poem Beowulf begins like this. Whet, we gardna in Geardegum. In modern English, this means, listen, we have heard of the glory of the Speardanes in days gone by. You can see how different it is. Old English had different grammar. It had complicated word endings, like Latin or German. The alphabet was also different. Old English used letters we don't use anymore, like the thorn, which looked like this. Tast. It made the th sound. Most Old English vocabulary came from Germanic roots. Words like house, water, mother, and strong come from Old English. These are simple, everyday words. They're some of the oldest words in the English language. But Old English didn't stay pure for long. In the year 597, Christian missionaries arrived in Britain. Missionaries are people who travel to spread their religion. These missionaries brought Latin, the language of the Roman Church. Latin words began entering English. Words like angel, school, and wine came from Latin during this period. Then, in the late 8th century, something violent happened. Vikings arrived. Vikings were warriors and traders from Scandinavia, the region that includes Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. They raided British towns. They stole treasures and burned villages. Eventually, they settled in the north and east of England. This area was called the Danelaw because it was ruled by Danish law. The Vikings spoke Old Norse, a language related to Old English but still quite different. Over time, Old Norse and Old English mixed. The Vikings gave English many common words. Words like sky, egg, knife, take, and get all come from Old Norse. Even the pronouns they, them, and their are Viking words. Before the Vikings, English speakers used different words. So by the year 1000, English was already a mix. It had Germanic roots, Latin religious words, and Scandinavian everyday vocabulary. But the biggest change was still to come. In 1066, everything changed. A man named William, the Duke of Normandy, invaded England. Normandy is a region in France. William's army defeated the English king at the Battle of Hastings. William became the new king. We call him William the Conqueror. A conqueror is someone who takes control of a place by force. William and his nobles spoke French. Not the French we know today, but an older version called Norman French. Suddenly, French became the language of power. The king spoke French. The nobles spoke French. The courts and the government used French. If you wanted to be successful, you had to speak French. But the common people, the farmers and workers, still spoke English. So England became a country with two languages. The rich spoke French. The poor spoke English. This divide lasted for almost 300 years. During this time, thousands of French words entered English. These words were often related to government, law, art, and food. Let me give you some examples. Words like government, court, judge, attorney, parliament, and prison all come from French. Words like art, beauty, music, dance, and poetry come from French. Food words like beef, pork, mutton, and poultry are also French. Here's something interesting. English often has two words for the same thing, one from Old English and one from French. The Old English word is usually simpler and more direct. The French word is often fancier or more formal. For example, help is Old English, but aid is French. Buy is Old English, but purchase is French. Start is Old English, but commence is French. This is why English has so many synonyms. Synonyms are words with similar meanings. By around 1400, the two languages had blended. The result was Middle English. Middle English is easier to understand than Old English, but it's still quite different from modern English. The most famous Middle English text is The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer wrote in the late 1300s. His English looks strange to us, but we can recognize many words. During the Middle English period, English grammar became simpler. The complicated word endings disappeared. English started to rely more on word order to show meaning. This is one reason why English grammar is simpler than languages like German or Russian today. Middle English also saw the growth of London as the center of England. The London dialect, the way people spoke in London, became the standard. A dialect is a regional variety of a language. This London dialect became the basis for modern English. Around 1500, the world was changing fast. This period is called the Renaissance. Renaissance is a French word that means rebirth. It was a time of new ideas, new art, and new discoveries. Europeans rediscovered ancient Greek and Roman texts. They explored new lands. They invented new technologies. Two big things happened that changed English forever. The first was the printing press. In 1476, a man named William Caxton brought the first printing press to England. Before the printing press, books were copied by hand. This was slow and expensive. Only rich people could afford books. But the printing press made books cheaper and faster to produce. Suddenly, more people could read. More people wanted to learn. And printed books helped standardize spelling and grammar. Standardize means to make things the same everywhere. Before printing, people spelled words however they wanted. There were no rules. But printers had to choose one spelling for each word. Over time, these spellings became fixed. The second big thing was the Renaissance love of learning. Scholars studied Latin and Greek. They borrowed thousands of words from these ancient languages. Words like education, history, biology, mathematics, architecture, and democracy came into English during this time. These words are often longer and more technical. Technical means related to a specific subject or skill. English also began to spread beyond England. In the 16th and 17th centuries, England started building an empire. English sailors and soldiers traveled to North America, the Caribbean, India, and beyond. Wherever they went, they took their language with them. This period also gave us William Shakespeare. Shakespeare lived from 1564 to 1616. He's the most famous writer in the English language. Shakespeare didn't just use English, he shaped it. He invented over 1,700 words. Words like bedroom, lonely, generous, gloomy, and radiance first appeared in his plays. He created phrases we still use today, like break the ice, wild goose chase, and heart of gold. By 1600, English looked and sounded much more like the English we use now. This is called early modern English. The grammar was almost the same. The vocabulary was growing rapidly, but pronunciation was still a bit different. For example, Shakespeare's English probably sounded closer to Irish or American accents than to modern British accents. By the 18th and 19th centuries, English was spreading around the globe. Britain built the largest empire in history. The British Empire controlled parts of Africa, Asia, the Americas, and the Pacific. Everywhere the British went, English went too. In some places, like the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, English became the main language. These countries are now called native English-speaking countries. In other places, like India, Nigeria, and Singapore, English became an official language used alongside local languages. Each region developed its own variety of English. American English sounds different from British English. Australian English has its own slang and accent. Indian English has its own rhythm and vocabulary. But they're all still English. People can still understand each other, even if some words or pronunciations are different. In the 20th century, something amazing happened. The United States became the world's most powerful country. American culture, through movies, music, television, and technology, spread everywhere. Hollywood films, rock and roll, jazz, and later hip-hop introduced American English to billions of people. Then came the Internet. The Internet was invented in the United States, and most early websites were in English. Email, social media, and online shopping all began in English. Even today, over half of all websites are in English. If you want to participate in the global conversation, English is often the key. English also became the language of science, aviation, and international business. Pilots and air traffic controllers around the world speak English. Scientists publish their research in English. International companies use English as their working language. Today, there are more non-native English speakers than native speakers. English belongs to the world now, not just to England or America. People in Tokyo, São Paulo, Dubai, and Stockholm all use English to communicate with each other. It's become a global lingua franca. A lingua franca is a common language used by people who speak different native languages. If you're learning English, you've probably noticed something. English can be very confusing. The spelling rules don't make sense. Words are pronounced in strange ways. Why is cough different from through? Why is colonel pronounced like colonel? Why do we say I am, but you are? The answer lies in English's complicated history. English borrowed words from so many different languages. Each language brought its own spelling and pronunciation rules. Old English gave us simple words. French gave us fancy words. Latin and Greek gave us technical words. And none of these systems match perfectly. English also went through something called the Great Vowel Shift. This happened between 1400 and 1700. During this time, the way people pronounced vowels changed. A vowel is a sound like A, E, I, O, or U. But the spelling stayed the same. That's why words look one way, but sound another way. Another challenge is that English keeps borrowing new words. Every year, new words enter the dictionary. Words like selfie, blog, emoji, and podcast didn't exist 20 years ago. English is always growing and changing. But here's the good news. English grammar is actually quite simple compared to many languages. English doesn't have gendered nouns like French or Spanish. You don't have to memorize if a table is masculine or feminine. English doesn't have many verb conjugations like Italian or Russian. Once you learn the basics, you can communicate quite well. And because English is everywhere, you have endless opportunities to practice. You can watch movies, listen to music, read books, and chat with people online. English surrounds you. That makes learning easier. We've traveled over 1,500 years today, from the arrival of the Angles and Saxons to the rise of the Internet. English has survived invasions, wars, empires, and revolutions. It has absorbed words from dozens of languages. It has traveled to every corner of the planet. The story of English is a story of change, adaptation, and connection. It shows how languages grow when people meet, trade, fight, and create together. English isn't just one thing. It's a living, breathing mix of history and culture. Today, English is your tool. Whether you use it for work, study, travel, or fun, you're part of this incredible story. Every time you speak or write in English, you're adding to its history. You're connecting with millions of other people around the world. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't worry if English seems strange sometimes. Remember, English has always been messy. It's always been a mix. And that's what makes it beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of the English language. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you feel a little more connected to the language you're learning. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you'd like to learn more about English, language, and culture, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'd also love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what surprised you most about the history of English? Or, what's the hardest part of learning English for you? I read every comment, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep learning, and take care.